Hello, I am Daniel Thompson. Welcome back to my channel, or our channel. For the purposes of this video, I am a fitness enthusiast, former gymnast, and language learning enthusiast. Also, learning about how to learn languages, not methods, but actual um, skill acquisition learning enthusiast. So, the former gymnast part is going to be significant here, and I'm going to try to tie these in. Let's get rid of some people from watching right now. This is going to be kind of long, probably very boring for many of you, maybe a little interesting for some of you. But if there's 100 people watching when I said this is going to be a long and boring, 90% of you just clicked off. Let's get rid of the other half. If you're here to think I'm going to be bashing any of the organizations or concepts in the title, click away. I probably may have a total of 5 people watch this video, but hopefully they will comment. Let's look at my notes. I made a lot of notes for this one. This is going to be complex, but I think it'll be fun and hope you'll like it. My experiences in gymnastics, fitness, and language learning kind of brought together a process for me that helped me with this surgery I had. I'll explain that in another video. But I want to try to explain to some people, especially people in the HIIT community, why functional training has become popular. I know they don't quite get it. I didn't either. Now, I am not a fanboy for any of these organizations or for any of these methods. I get it. I don't practice them anymore. So, to be full disclosure, CrossFit, the last time I practiced anything CrossFit, your website was in handwritten HTML and it was pretty obvious. So that'll tell you how long it's been since I've done any of that kind of stuff. Orange Theory, like I said, I've watched your videos, watched some of the concepts, peeked into one near me here, and watched, and similar effects, similar things, but I have never actually been in an Orange Theory studio, so I don't know. Straight up, both of them, let's just go with I don't know. But I have experienced them a little bit. And most people know the orange part of the Orange Theory is the range of training, and that's not new to Orange Theory, but how they organize it is. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 examples of true functional training, maybe 3. First one, pit crew. Half of the HIIT people right now kind of, yeah. The other half, nope, not. They're still, nope. But some of them, yeah. Second example, battleship training. Both of those are incredibly functional. And if you've ever watched pit crew videos on YouTube and seen how fast they go, it's shocking. And even the pit crews themselves will tell you that they get to the point they can't believe how fast they're actually moving. It appears superhuman. That superhuman appearance comes from incredible amounts of rehearsal over and over and over again until you can't not get it wrong. Until the only outcome is a perfect success. Over and over and over again. I'll go more into that. Today's functional training is really nothing more than simulated labor. Let that phrase sink in. Simulated labor. That's okay. It's okay. But I'd rather get paid for my labor instead of simulating it. Okay, all right. So let's talk about simulated labor for a moment. In physical therapy, there is a process. That version of functional training is a lot more real, a lot more palpable, or a lot more you can see. You're very debilitated. Now, functional ability and functional training, very different beasts, very different. When you're doing functional training from rehab, you are trying to regain the functional practices of your daily life. And you work on those. You actually work on those, just like I did now. One of the practices I've been doing is, because of the type of surgery I had, nerves were moved, and I literally had to relearn how to pee. That sounds funny and everything, but it is the same process as pretty much any other skill activity. Now, there's a difference because you got involuntary muscles and some voluntary. So there's some difference, but same process, same process. The part about language learning, functional training, skill acquisition, language learning is the skill progression sequence for language learning is no different than for gymnastics, is no different than for battleship, no different than pit crew. And if you think language learning is not physical, try learning Russian and pronouncing mui, vui, ti. Anybody Russian listening right now is grimacing at my horrible pronunciation, because my throat right here and my tongue are out of practice of making that sound, that vowel sound. I cannot, if I practice, I can get close, but I can just see the wince in Russian person's face if I try to speak to them with that. But they can understand. With more practice, I can get better, and I have said it better, and I've been congratulated for that too. But if you don't practice it, those bonds of link, of association, get looser and looser. If you don't sleep enough, they get looser. If you smoke too much dope, they get looser. Other medications, just looser and looser and looser until you need to rebuild them. So, one of the things missing in many of the explanations, especially in the HIT community, about skill acquisition, indirect transfer, negative transfer, POTS, all these things, is the aspect of cognition. What I mean by that, and I'm going to say these words, and if you got dual monitors, get your monitor on here, or you can just minimize this, bring up Google Scholar, and if you type in, where'd you hear me say, I'm not going to be using anything fancy, I'm going to try to use common words. Where'd you hear me say, just look it up, you'll probably see the same ones I looked at. Go to Google Scholar and just type in some keywords. You'll think of them, you'll see. Okay. In rehab, you want to get people back to daily life. That is functional ability, functional training, daily life training. One of the things, Ken Hutchins, you wrote that article on skill acquisition and music training. That article is what really kind of sent me on a path of language learning. I thank you for that. That process really kind of opened up my eyes, and I started to learn about the process of acquiring language. And acquiring language, there are some parts of it that are a little different. Your environment makes a huge difference. But the process of skill acquisition is the same. Doesn't matter. Sorry, got to stand up again. May have to take a couple of breaks. I got a lot of notes, and these are notes that I'm just, again, off of experience. So, one of the things about HIT philosophy is the separation of powers. And by separation of powers, I mean strength training should be separate, skill acquisition should be separate from each other. These are more efficient this way. Okay, yeah, probably. I get it. Agree for the most part. Yep. More ideal. Not always more practical. Not always reasonable in terms of daily living. Again, I'm thinking on sustainable fitness here. I'm going to use two examples, actually three. The first example is going to be a gymnastic skill. It is a handstand, simple skill. The second is a Chinese phrase. Not this one. This Gunwo Shuo Zhongwen means please speak Chinese with me. But that's not the phrase. The first example in handstand. To learn any skill, you want a really good preparation sequence. Something that is going to pretty much guarantee success. In a handstand, there is an inhibition that occurs from achieving a handstand. And that inhibition is fear. Fear of falling down, fear of falling over. You'll start kicking up and not get quite there. So what you do is first thing, before you start practicing and trying handstand, you learn how to turn out, how to roll, how to safely and easily, if you don't make the handstand, get out. So once that's accomplished, the inhibition is removed. In the brain, that fear less, that a little bit less. Neural pathways open up, chemicals open up, and allow you to try a little harder. Not harder, but go a little farther, because the confidence you have now. Confidence is the key word here. The confidence you have now allows you to go up to here. You get close a couple of times, and each time it's, yeah, a little more. And then you get that one time, that first time, you hold a handstand. And if you've done this, you remember that first time. You remember it clearly. You might even remember the smell around you. You might even remember the place, that first handstand. In gymnastics, we have a saying called, once is luck, twice is coincidence, three times is skill. For the purposes of skill acquisition, that's mostly correct. There's a lot of details in between all that is pretty complex, but that basic process is pretty close. Once you have a skill, once you've done your handstand 3 times, you start working on mastery, repetition, over and over and over. In the example of a pit crew, they drill those functions, filling up the thing, changing the tire, adjusting the suspension, whatever it is. I'm not aware. I've only heard a little bit. I don't know. But those guys move so fast you can barely see, and I think they can even barely see what they're doing. So you start working on mastery of the skill. You get to where you cannot mess up. With a handstand, you do a lot of handstands. You get used to the feeling of being on your hands. You get used to pirouettes. You get used to walking. You get used to moving one bar. You start going around your house, walking all around the house. You just stay on your hands and you get familiar with every feeling. And you start narrowing down margin of error. And as that margin of error gets smaller and smaller, your likelihood of success is greater and greater each time until your margin of error is so small you almost never mess up. It'll happen occasionally, but it'll be rare. Some people are what they call differentiators. I can't remember differentiators and specific to skill. A good example of this is on men's parallel bars. There's a move called the Stutz. The original full word is Stutz care or something like that, but it's Stutz. We call it Stutz. It is you're in a handstand on parallel bars, swing down, half turn, catch and handstand. Or Stutz, you catch, Stutz, handstand, catch, handstand. It sounds not too difficult. The swing down part is not difficult, but the half turn part is extremely complex. Very complex. You'll hear some people say, this is between the advanced beginner and intermediate level of a gymnast. You'll hear some gymnasts say after they've achieved a Stutz hand, they will say, it feels like two completely different moves. A Stutz to almost handstand and a Stutz to handstand feels almost, they feel different. That last 2 inches of riding that arm, it makes it feel like a different move. To some people, no, it doesn't feel that much different. I think if you ask people in the Olympics, and everyone in the Olympics, men's parallel bars can do a Stutz. That's just, yeah, that's the thing. If you ask them all, does the Stutz almost a handstand and also the handstand feel like really different moves? Most of them are probably going to say no. So they're able to move. Skills don't seem as different from each other to them. Their indirect transfer is wider. There's a thing about indirect transfer and cognition. When I started learning Chinese, or any other language, one of the things you do is input. Listen, 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 listen. That's what these are for. I'm listening all day, annoyingly to many people. Any language I learn, you do lots of input. For example, I have a list of phrases that are basic phrases, basic dialogues. For example, when I walk the dogs, I have a playlist of input that is just simple Chinese. I know it, I hear it, it's vocabulary words, phrases I know. You play it over and over and over and over and over again until you hear and hear and hear. You start reinforcing those connections with those words. I remember the first day somebody spoke Chinese and I understood. This little girl, Dalian, I think, at the time. She was in Dalian. Her mom was my language partner, and she had gotten home from work and sending me voice messages, and I'm practicing. And she asked, Kamina, basically, and what are you doing? And I said, I'm fine, chula. I ate dinner. And in the background, I could hear her, I think 8-year-old daughter at the time, her 8-year-old daughter say, if I recall it, 你不吃晚饭，因为现在早上，no, 上网 yeah, no, not 上网，早上. You don't eat dinner because it's breakfast. In China, it's the opposite time of the time. For her, it was morning. I understood it. It was the first time I completely understood a full sentence in Chinese. It's the same feeling as that handstand, elation. That feeling opens up your brain. The chemicals that happen when you have a successful completion of a skill reinforce the skill, reinforces the neural pathways, reinforces other things. Now, if you have gone through preparations, good, careful preparations of other skills, even unlike skills, but you've done the preparations, once you have had a successful completion of a skill, like something like a simple handstand, and you go try another one that you've been working on, you are more likely to complete it. Look it up. It's a thing. You are more likely during that time after the completion of a successful attempt to have another completion, even of a different skill. Not quite indirect transfer, but because you've been doing progressions and preparation. Preparation is the key word. Let's see where I am in this. Skill acquisition has a snowball effect. And debt relief, there's a thing now called the snowball method. Used to, with debt relief, you would go with your highest percentage point. Okay, let's turn that down. Highest percentage point of what is that stuff you got to pay back? Okay, y'all understand. And snowball with snowball debt method, you tackle your lowest amount one first because you are more likely to have a successful completion of dropping that down. That successful completion of getting rid of that uh, lowest amount debt makes it a you get that elation. Yes, yes. You got more energy. You got more ammunition to tackle the next one. You got more money too. So again, elation. Brain opens up. Neural patterns open up. Chemistry opens up these things and seals in these skills. Sealing in the skills is very, very important. Successful outcome of a skill in gymnastics will frequently, very frequently lead to an avalanche of other skills, not even similar. Pommel horse in men's gymnastics is unlike any other part of gymnastics. We might put it on parallel bars and floor occasionally, kind of give it a break dancing effect, but pommel horse is a different beast. You're going this way, whereas in gymnastics you're going this way or this way. Pommel horse should be its own Olympic event, I think. That's my opinion. Um, but you are more likely, after a successful completion of any event you've been trying and working on, um, if you go to pommel horse, you've been working on something, you're more likely to complete it right then because that brain is ready for it. You'll have an avalanche of skills. Some people, it'll be a couple of days, beginner level. Uh, Advanced beginner and intermediate, maybe even advanced, it'll be a couple of weeks, couple of months. But it tops out, plateaus. Your brain can only process so much input, and then it has to process all that. When you come to that plateau, you're starting to work on mastery. That's when you're the pit crew and your repetition over and over and over. I am going to take a break and come back.